welcome to City Council. We were waiting for the baseball game to get over. We didn't want to cut away and get accused of having another Heidi situation for you old timers that remember that game. But anyway, welcome to City Council. We've invited Gar Swenson to lead us in a prayer. Yes. Thanks, Garth.
Our Father in heaven, we approach you this evening with gratitude in our hearts for this great community that we reside in. We're grateful for the protection of the mountains and the valley that we live in. We're grateful for the leaders of our city and our residents. We pray that proper decisions will be made here this evening, that there may be a feeling of cooperation as we discuss important matters. And we ask for these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I'm going to ask Councilman Scopes to lead us in the pledge.
The audience, please rise. Repeat the pledge with me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, public comments. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a public comment? Okay, seeing none, go to council comments. Councilman Mendenhall.
I yield my time to the Chamber Director, Clark Karras, and Chamber President, Stacy Beck, if they have a few words to say about our Chamber of Commerce and our businesses here in town.
You really don't want to yield your time to a Greek. Come on. I mean, it's hard to talk us quiet. You guys already know that. So, but I appreciate Stacy Beck being here. Stacy is this year's president and is doing an absolutely fantastic job. We've got an incredible executive team that is a lot of the word is fun, which that I mean comes into play. But at the invitation of Councilman Mendenhall, we are going to, as a chamber, do the Taste of Spanish Fork during Fiesta Days. And we've had our first business sign up for the Friday night, and we hope to have a few more so that while there are no stalls that we'll be interfering with the regular Fiesta Days, we'll be able to feed the tens of thousands of young people that gather on Center Street. So we're doing that. I want to remind the council of the East Ferry Hunt on April 4th. And make sure that you have current insurance. If you don't, you can contact the Vice President, Lance, and get that. I keep looking at the picture of that toddler and that line of kids and keep waiting for Mel Gibson to come out and throw a hammer or something. But we're moving along there, and I've got a lot of incredible community support. There should be no parent child go away disappointed, so, and parent too, apparently. So we're looking forward to that. And then the golf tournament, the Rotary Spanish Fork Salem Area Chamber golf tournament will be May 24th. And
21st.
Yes, 21st, I'm sorry. And apparently none of you like to golf, so you won't be getting, no. You all should be getting invitations that went out just the other day. And just as a side note, last week, I think most of you recognized that we had our first presidential member have a ribbon cutting that we had to design a brand new plaque for because that had never taken place in the community before. And we were quite excited about that, as it looked like apparently everyone else was. And it even got my parents out shopping in a new place just to see. So that's what it's all about, is to see what is out there, and my dad still came and bought a pair of boots on Main Street. So, you know, he couldn't find anything there to eat, so he bought boots. It works all those different ways, you know. It's like I keep saying, Main Street is where you take it. And so I think it covers everything.
so.
We appreciate our relationship with the city. We have had a spurt of, we've had 7 new renewals in the last week of businesses, and we're just enjoying kind of the excitement. And Stacy is the one that, I guess Mayor Leifson is not here because he heard she was coming. She is the one that embarrassed him as one of the Fab 40. No. Yeah. And we did get out, and I need to make sure that we have all of your email addresses included, but an electronic newsletter that we're going to start on a regular basis. And in that, I just wanted to say that we paid tribute, as well as I saw Mayor Leifson do it in an incredibly eloquent way to our first responders. And I'd like to tell the chief that as someone who makes his living in communications, they did an absolutely amazing job for Spanish Fork with what happened in the last week and a half. So, thanks.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, Clark. Thanks, Stacy. That's it.
Okay, Councilman Scopes.
The only thing to report, we had, just after last council meeting, we had our airport board meeting. Just discussed the apron improvements, which will be talked about in the consent items a little bit more. And then board appointments, as well as the way forward with the airport as far as plans and things of that nature. Beyond that, nothing else to report.
Okay, Councilman Gordon.
Tomorrow, we're meeting at the South Utah Valley Municipal Waste District and Springville City offices. We got a number of challenges ahead of us we'll be discussing, so I'll report on that in the next meeting. Thursday meeting with the animal shelter, so I'll approve a budget on that as well and report on that in the next meeting. Miss Spanish Fork is coming up, so it is Saturday, April 4th. It's I believe that's Easter weekend, and I know it's conference weekend too, so a little bit of a scheduling challenge with the high school, but if you've got any neighbors or friends or possibly family members participating, they love the support, and you can get your tickets now for that. So I wanted to put a plug in as I've been helping them with that. And then lastly, I just I echo what Clark said about our police, and it's been a wonderful last few days and last week, just talking through a lot of the events that happened, and I just appreciate and love all of our first responders. So I hope they understand and know that. That's all I have.
Okay, all I was going to say was the same with our public safety department. If you read Mayor Leifson's article in the paper, I think it was this morning, I just echo everything that he said, and we couldn't be happier and proud the way you guys serve our community. So we thank you for that very much. Okay, that's all we have on that. Said items, I think is next. CenturyLink. Did we decide who was doing that? You are, Jason.
I am doing it,
Okay,
or I will present it at least.
all right.
This CenturyLink contract, we've been working on for, Kelly, last almost 3 years now. Before we had a contract, I believe, with Quest for a joint pole attachment agreement, which basically we have a number of poles throughout the city that their equipment is attached to, and then vice versa, they have a much smaller number. The numbers, just so you know, are on page 3 at the very top, first and second line. We have 1148 number of poles in Spanish Fork that they are attached to as a company, and they have 160 poles that we are currently attached to. The only difference between this contract and some of the previous contracts is a slight increase. The national average changed within the last couple of years, and the increase in the amount per pole or rental fee per pole is gone up to $15. It used to be around $5, and now it's up to 15. We have gotten all the agreement, most of the agreement was hung up on getting the right personnel to talk to, and then once we did, there were a number of small minor issues to talk about, but that's been all ironed out, and we'd ask that you approve it.
Okay, thank you. Gun club maintenance contract.
Can you shoot a gun with that? Just checking. Arrow.
An arrow? Probably not an arrow.
Better than the hot.
Okay, the contract that you have with the staff report, at the gun club, we have trap houses that actually throw the trap out for the guys to shoot, and we have 12 of those that need maintenance on a regular basis. Steve Johnson has been maintaining those for many, many years, just to be a nice guy. So he has resigned as the gun club president, and he still has an interest in the gun club, and we have done some checking on what it costs to maintain those. The problem we have with the trap houses is we have to have somebody on site during the entire shoot. If you have one go down, you can see that causes a major backlog with some of these 4-day shoots that just would not be good PR for us. And so we're proposing that we start compensating Steve in the amount of $600 a month to be the maintenance guy on these traps. We have other shoots that bring guys in for 1, 4, or 5-day shoot, and it costs them $5,000. The only other place we found to get them fixed, we have to ship them to them at our expense, and it's $75 an hour to have them repaired, and then pay for the expense to ship them back. The other thing that we're trying to do with this is have him continue to keep a maintenance record, which we've never had, of these traps. And obviously, if we're spending too much money on one and it'd be more cost effective to replace it, that's what we'll do. So that's our proposal for his contract. That will be covered through gun club revenues,
So what you're saying is we're getting a bargain here.
through their enterprise fund. We're getting a bargain. Besides the fact that Steve does a lot of other things besides just sit there and wait for a trap to break down. He's pretty active in helping with a lot of other areas, so.
Okay, thanks, Dale. Next one is a 2015 apron rehabilitation project. That's Kelly.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how the power department got here on the airport, but I guess I did something to Chris that he said I was going to be here. So he asked me to speak on it, and they did the original phase 1 of this project a year or so ago, and they are coming back in now to do the second phase. They are totally removing and taking out in the area you can see shaded in purple. They're going to reconstruct. The stuff that is in the light green, they are going to roto mill and overlay. This is 90% funded with state grant funding, and then 10% is budgeted in the airport's capital facilities fund, which 5% is Spanish Fork City and 5% is Springville. So the monies are there, the money's allocated for it. They're just asking for your approval to move ahead with the project. So,
All right, anybody got any questions?
Motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilman Gordon, second by Councilman Mendenhall to approve the consent items. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Go down to public hearing, ordinance 08-15 impact fee enactment. Dave's gonna take care of that.
Actually, Councilman Dart, if you don't mind, Dave Weather suggested that we talk about the annexation first and maybe
okay.
move to that one.
Okay, we can do that.
Unless the audience wants to listen to the. I got a really good impact fee presentation. Just stay out there, right?
Let's do the annexation.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll do the annexation first, okay.
Let's go to the PDF first. Yeah, let's just talk about that. This annexation, we've called it the Devaney annexation, was initiated by Spanish Fork City, and we've been through a process over the course of the past few months where we've completed the necessary notice requirements. We've been through a protest period, and we haven't received any protests. So we're here tonight with a recommendation from staff and the Planning Commission, hoping that the City Council will take action either to approve or deny the proposed annexation. The idea behind this annexation originated just about a year and a half ago. So we're talking with a company that was looking for a site here in Spanish Fork, potentially to locate some type of a facility, some type of a manufacturing facility on. As we looked at different areas in the city, we had to rule out many of them because we simply don't have utility services to a number of different properties and areas that are in the north end of the community where we anticipate having different companies develop over time. But the properties in this annexation here really jumped out at us, even though they weren't in the city, because we have a power substation nearby. We have a sewer line that's very close to the property and likely could serve most of it. We have water lines. And by and large, the property's really ready for development today, much more ready than many of the industrially zoned properties that we have in the city. So we talked a little bit then about going through this process, and for whatever reason kind of got sidetracked for a number of months. Revived that effort again last fall. And that's just a little bit behind the background. And also I think that helps illustrate our motivation behind wanting the properties annexed. We simply are looking to add something to the pool that we have as we approach different companies that we know have some interest, potentially at least, in having a facility in the community. Over the years, Spanish Fork, I think, has been very fortunate, and I think the city's done a wonderful job in developing a pretty diverse inventory of different land uses. We're not simply a bedroom community. Thousands of people are employed here in the city, and we think that's a great thing, largely just in terms of quality of life. So that's the motivation that we've had in initiating the annexation. As we as staff looked at the general plan, we found that calls for the properties potentially to allow for some type of industrial development. So I'll talk for just a minute about staff's recommendation for the annexation and action that the Planning Commission took in their last meeting. Does anybody have a... This one has a small... Borrow this. So the properties that we're talking about in the annexation include 125 acres that are located basically right here. You can't see the property lines on this image, but that's where they're at. This is our general plan map, and that gray color that you see, that designates this area as well as other areas in the city industrial. And with that industrial designation, there are a few different types of zoning that can coincide and be consistent with the general plan. Just to cut to the chase, the recommendation that staff originally made for the annexation was that the properties be annexed and that industrial 1 or light industrial zoning be assigned at the time of annexation. And with that said, as I mentioned, we took the annexation proposal to the Planning Commission just, I think, 2 weeks ago now. And in that meeting, the Planning Commission recommended that the properties be annexed, but that the assigned zoning not be industrial 1, but rather be urban village commercial. Now, we had a fairly lengthy discussion in the Planning Commission about zoning. I'll characterize their feelings about the annexation simply as being that they didn't seem to have any concerns about annexing the subject properties. They're part of our annexation declaration. It seems to be a fairly logical, next set of properties to annex. But we did talk a lot about the zoning. And during the zoning discussion, we talked a lot about the idea of allowing for a mixture of uses or some type of mixed-use development. And largely because of that discussion, I have to take credit for suggesting that if that's what the Planning Commission wants to see, they perhaps should consider the one mixed-use zone that we have in the city, which is urban village commercial. So I'll take some credit for floating that out there for them to consider. But I need to be clear right now to say that that simply is not consistent with the general plan. I don't think it's consistent in any respect with the general plan, and I think if we took any effort to study the urban village commercial zone, we'd see that the likelihood for these properties developing consistent with what that zone would allow is very, very slim. So, again, staff has recommended the properties be annexed. We initially recommended the properties be annexed with industrial 1 zoning. The Planning Commission has recommended the properties be annexed, but that they be annexed with the urban village commercial zoning. And tonight I want to talk about maybe a little different approach. So I'll just take a minute on this, and Seth, if you can help me with that other image that we have. One thing that I appreciate about our general plan is that it gives us a little bit of latitude. It's intended to be a fairly broad brush type of vision as to what we should do in approving things like zone changes and different development proposals. It's not intended to provide a completely specific, thou shalt do X on any given property. But again, rather to be a more broad guide. And one of the things that I appreciate about things that we've looked at in this part of the city, because of surrounding uses that we have, things like PDM Steel, a development that we approved just across the street from the annexation on the north side of 10th North. Still hasn't come to fruition yet, but that's partly how infrastructure came to be in close proximity to the property. Existing zoning that exists in the area, which is industrial, different things like that. I think it's very appropriate that the general plan designate this area industrial. Now, at the same time, we know that some different things are going to happen south of this area on the west side of Interstate 15. To the best of our knowledge, someplace in the vicinity of First South or maybe Center Street, someday there's going to be a commuter rail stop. That will really be a game changer for that part of the community and land uses that surround that commuter rail station, if or when that ever happens. And that's something that we've accounted for as we looked at the general plan, just simply with the understanding that we'd want a pretty diverse type of land use inventory for that area if that commuter rail stop ever happens. And that's why we have this blue designation on the map. And again, it's a half a mile or so south of the area that we're talking about, but I think does play a role in what should be considered here. Now, we know that around commuter rail stops, a lot of times the land uses that you see are pretty intense. It's pretty high density residential type development, commercial uses, different uses that generate a lot of traffic and things like that. And usually around those types of uses, we try to provide some type of buffer or transition with uses that are a little less impactful. And because of that, we've planned to have some lower density residential type development surrounding that area, if or when it develops. Which I think factors into what we're talking about here because of that residential component and the latitude that the general plan gives us. It's my understanding that some property owners in the annexation have concerns about their properties being zoned industrial. And I think the general plan gives us the latitude to, for example, say that this line here, instead of maybe being, down in here, should be a little bit further to the north, so that we could consider what we're showing on this image and assign now, at the time of annexation, residential zoning for the properties that are outlined in green on this image. And just simply from the perspective of staff, as we prepared the general plan, that's really how we anticipated that it'd be put to use. That we'd look at broad needs and things that make sense on a broad scale when considering things like the zoning that should be assigned to an annexation. And that's really what I'm recommending that you consider tonight. Instead of what we originally proposed, which was having all of the annexation area zoned industrial, we split the zoning. We follow property lines like is shown on that image there, so that the areas outlined in green would be zoned rural residential. So conceivably, somebody could build a home on those properties if they cared to, while also following the general plan by assigning industrial zoning on the properties on the northern part of the annexation, which I think is completely consistent with the general plan. I also need to mention that I think this approach helps eliminate some of the fears that we have about certain types of development that might happen residentially in that part of the city that we're probably not ready to serve today, and different things like that. But again, if a property owner wanted to build a home or homes on those properties that would be assigned the rural residential zoning, we certainly could do that. We could issue permits for that with that zoning immediately. So, again, like I said, staff's recommended that the annexation be approved. The Planning Commission did as well. We've had a little different perspective on zoning. But this is something that's important, I believe, to the city, this annexation. Our efforts are ongoing and continuous by way of trying to attract new employers to the community. Frankly, they come in all different shapes and sizes. So another thing, maybe the last thing that I really want to clarify is that with the industrial 1 zoning being assigned to these properties, that is light industrial zoning. So even, for example, something like PDM Steel, where they have a large outdoor storage area, big cranes and different things like that, I don't believe that that is consistent with Industrial 1 zoning. We're talking about completely enclosed manufacturing operations or business park types of uses and things like that. Things that certainly, I think, could and would be compatible with the type of development that we'd expect to see further to the south on this side of I-15, when some other things change in the future there. So, we have provided notices tonight for a public hearing on the annexation, which you need to hold before you take action. And I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has now or later, so.
Okay, we might have some questions after, but let's have the public hearing first.
Thanks.
Okay, I'd accept a motion, go in public hearing.
I move that we go into public hearing.
Second. Third.
A motion by Councilman Scobes, second by Councilman Mendenhall, go public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Anybody have anything they'd like to say? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
My name is Gar Swenson. I'm one of the property owners there in the green. I noticed that you've already annexed a little bit of my property without my knowledge. I don't know if that can ever be changed, but anyway, that's another matter. But I'm wondering about the master plan, or the general plan. Is it cut and dry? Does it have to stay that way, or can it be changed? Because you go further south, you've got all of that as designated as light industry. And there are homes all around that area. And there are other people that would like to build homes there, that landowners that I know of at least 2 that would like to build homes in this area further to the south.
You got a pointer there, Garth.
Well, the home,
You just press that button on the top, there you go.
your map doesn't show, but I know there's other property over here in this area that's still in this corner of a couple of people that would like to build homes there. There are homes, there are nice homes here in this area. There's another one down about right here. There's a nice home there, and there are other homes across the road here that you've got, that it looks like to me that future annexations would include that as industrial. And then if you look further west, that whole area is agriculture and a lot of beautiful homes. There are hundreds of people living out there, and I'm not sure that we want to set up a buffer zone between Spanish Fork and the rest of the county with some big box warehouses and factories and terminals and whatever may go in this area. My concern is once you cross 10th North with industry, it'll just keep pushing that way. And I think there's ample property, probably thousands of acres north, that have already been annexed into the city that could easily accommodate future businesses coming into this area. If you go clear north over to where the Springville exit is, I used to own some of that property, so I know there's at least 125 acres right there that's all conjoined with easy access off the freeway where somebody could, and it's already annexed into the city, where somebody could come in and build the kind of industrial businesses that you're recommending for this area. I know, you've got the utilities there, and maybe that's an incentive, but think what it's going to look like years down the road. Do we want to have an industrial buffer between Spanish Fork City and the rest of the county?
Dave, can you speak to that? Is the general plan, is it written in stone? Can it be changed? I think he's talking about this area right in here and farther.
Yes, it can be changed.
As it's annexed.
No, that would be a separate process to go through to change the general plan. We're required to do a few different things, hold public hearings. We probably want to put some thought in exactly what those changes would be.
So basically, this is just an idea.
Well,
Right here.
it's an idea that the city's adopted as the vision for the future. So we've been through the process with public hearings and so forth to come up with the designations that we're looking at right there. And, like I said, I believe it offers some latitude. That's why, for example, with the different designations that we see throughout the city, we don't follow property lines. We're really just trying to convey an idea as to what we want land use relationships to be as we go from one area to another. And with that, I think you have some discretion as to where, for example, the industrial development starts and residential development ends, or vice versa, and that type of a thing. Kind of like I talked about here. The concerns that have been raised about zoning that might be assigned with future annexations might happen south and west of what we're talking about tonight. I think the only way really to determine that is to go through the process that we're talking about tonight and see what zoning ultimately the city council feels is appropriate. I think the general plan as it currently reads clearly does give you some latitude.
Okay.
And that's not by accident that it's been prepared that way.
And Dave, while you're still up here, the property that Garth was talking about over by the Springville exit, that would be in Springville, right? I mean, that would be, or are you talking, is there property that you're talking about in Spanish Fork? Then you're aware of that acreage over there. What is it zoned?
Light industrial.
Light industrial as
I mean,
well.
what's in Spanish Fork City surrounding the airport and north of the new retail development on the east side of I-15. It's zone light industrial, the same kind of zoning that we're talking about here. We have challenges providing water, power, and sewer, or at least getting those utilities to properties. It's not cheap. And I think largely because of that, we don't have people coming to our community to see if those are suitable sites. You know, they can tell just from what we provide them on paper by way of the off-site expense that would be involved to develop those properties, that they simply look elsewhere. And that's really what's different here. It's a pretty attractive site that, it's the most attractive site, in fact, that we've been able to identify inside or outside of Spanish Fork.
I think another feature that may be worth pointing out in this area is the access to the rail lines that really are absent north of town or by the airport, where this sits in between the two rail lines. If I'm correct me if I am wrong, Dave, but this site has ready access with the spur or close to that, right? And other locations don't have that, which makes the light industrial use here a lot easier for somebody to use than say north of town by the airport. They don't have that rail access that they need.
It's a unique characteristic that sometimes is requisite for different companies. We do believe that access to rail here is certainly a possibility.
Yeah. So Garth, to answer your question, it's not set in stone. But I have a question. Let's just talk about this annexation right here. Are you happy with what is proposed right here?
Well, for my own property, yes, I'm happy for that, but I am concerned about the precedents we're setting by coming across 3rd or 10th North. And I know the rail, that's an important factor, but look up there. There's property all between 2 rail roads. And you go further north, there's property clear over into Springville where they could bring in companies. They would help us too, our citizens. If a company comes in here, how many of Spanish Fork citizens are going to be working there? Some will, but a lot of them will be coming from all over the valley. So I don't know why we feel like we have to be the ones to provide all of the industrial areas for the whole valley. I think this area eventually could be a real nice residential area. You've got easy access to, maybe, can you move the map over just a little?
That one, but I can pull up a different one.
But when you look, you've got 4th North at easy access to come down 4th North and get into this area, or go under the overpass on 3rd West and turn right down and you're into that area. Here's 3rd West and it comes right down into here. Right now, the city's a little lopsided if you think about it. I mean, we go clear east to the mountain, and we only go to the freeway on the west side of the town. We're concerned about Main Street being developed and that, yet most of our residents are on the east side and they get on Highway 6 and away they go to Provo. If you had some residential areas here, it would be easier access to Main Street. I think there's some benefits to having some good residential areas there. But not only that, I think when you think of all the other people that live west of here, I don't think we want to set the precedence of having an area of big box warehouses there that they've got to pass through before they come into town. Those are my feelings.
Okay, thanks, Garth.
Dave, can you speak to maybe some challenges growing up west of I-15 there, and Brandon can speak to this a little bit too, but spending some time out there living, there's some significant challenges to residential stuff out there, wouldn't there be, with a water table level and things as far as basements and whatnot?
Yeah, it's my understanding that you'd have a hard time probably building with basements in this part of the community. Certainly in other areas to the south that we've looked at, that would be the case. Honestly, I'm not certain about that. And I certainly appreciate Mr. Swenson's perspective, but I have a different perspective. just given the discussions that we had when the general plan designations that we talked about were adopted 4 or 5 years ago, see the area a little bit differently, just given what surrounds it today. I'm not sure that 10th North really does make a really functional transition from the types of uses that are to the north. The zoning that exists on the north side of 10th North. And again, just having a facility as large as PDM Steel in such close proximity, along with railroad tracks, power substation, I-15, different things like that, I don't think make it probably an area for a real upscale, lease type residential development. Access for industrial uses potentially is pretty good, but I don't believe that today access to really any properties on the west side of I-15 is very well suited at all for any kind of residential development. That will change over time. We know it will. It'll get better. And that's why, south of this area, we're considering a pretty different makeup of land uses. At least that's what this vision suggests. But I think simply in this area, with at least the majority of the properties in this annexation, we have a different vision than what Mr. Swenson's talking about.
Dave, while you're up here, excuse me, Mr. Swenson made a comment about being annexed without his knowledge. Can you take us through the process and how that might have happened? And so I'm not sure which part of his property he was talking about. Excuse me, when he said that I see you got a piece of mine. That concerns me if we've missed anybody here tonight that might not know that, or any of that. So if you'll take us through that, please.
Yeah, I am not familiar with any properties that might have previously been annexed into the city and how that happened.
Show-
This happened, I don't know when it happened, but this little strip right there, see that red line goes right through my property.
Gotcha.
So is this corner annexed into the city right here?
That's correct. The city boundary right now.
Okay, and this
follows
goes
that red
right through
line.
his property right here.
Yeah.
So there's a road, these lines don't always line up with actual space, but there's a road underneath this line, and you might be able to recognize,
The county plat shows that
There's a-
property is J-land.
yeah, but there's a road, there's a little service road underneath here, which are not the city boundary line.
That's a ditch,
Okay, ditch.
it's not a road.
You see his name. Anyways, that looks like it follows that.
I can't speak to that, but relative to the annexation that's before you tonight, we have provided all of the required notices. We've gone at least a little bit above and beyond that by sending letters to property owners, given that we have, with their consent, initiated this. In fact, it's Mrs. Brenneman that's done most of that work for us. That's really all I can say.
Appreciate that.
That piece probably was annexed, I think J-land annexed his piece probably 10, 15 years ago. That's what happened.
And did I understand that was, when you said that was for PDM possibly relocating, or no? In that corner? Okay. They weren't,
PDM,
I know where PDM is, but they weren't talking about relocating somewhere else. Okay.
Okay, is there anyone else that'd like to speak to this?
You're Rod.
I'm great.
My name's Ed Nielsen. My only concern is, like, this here's been annexed for a while. And they've had the signs up about, they've wanted to get, from what I can see, a business park, and they've touted that there's the rail line right there. My only concern is if it's just smaller, I'm not sure what size businesses we're talking. And I think really the downside of the railroad is, I work at Capstone and I know what it costs. The railroad's not cheap. So my concern is that you're gonna get these smaller businesses or business parks, and they can't afford to have the railroad come in. And so I don't know, I mean, this part's here has been sitting empty for, you know, I'm assuming they finally gave up on it because they started farming it again. So that's my concern, is that is it just gonna sit there? Because nobody, you know, you might get some, but I don't see the railroad as being an incentive to get places in simply because of the cost. And also, in my mind, some of the business parks I see are kind of not, I don't want to call them trashy, but you get so many residents in and so many move in and out, and then it kind of, you know, they don't look so well. So that's just kind of my only concern about that is, you know, is it going to get developed, or are you going to have, you know, make these business parks and then nobody really comes? Because I guess I don't see the railroad being there as a benefit, just from my own experience where I work, but just simply the cost of what it costs to have them bring stuff. So
It's going to be continued to be farmed until the landowner sells it. He doesn't want to sell it,
Okay.
he doesn't have to sell it. If he wants to farm it forever, he could farm it forever, just because it's zoned. My question is, what happens to the property taxes if it's zoned at light industrial? Does it go out of the green belt? Does it stay in the green belt? It could stay in as long as it's being farmed, even if it's zoned light industrial. As long as they have 5 acres and they farm it.
The zoning doesn't make any difference, at least initially, until somebody sells off and
Yeah,
then the properties, as they start to shrink past the 5 acre.
yeah. So the landowner still has a right to retain it or sell it, no matter what it's zoned. I mean, somebody that could come in and offer you peanuts for you and say, no way. Or somebody could come in and offer you the sun, moon, and the stars, and what are you gonna do? You're gonna sell it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Anyone else like to speak to this?
I came in a little late, I just have a question on that.
Okay,
I've got to go to the mic.
yes, you do.
Then you have to run.
Oh, so I'm being, what if they recognize me from the post office?
Yeah, dang. I guess my question on it, has there been any request from any property owners to have this annexed at all, or is this just the city wanting to annex this property in?
I think the city initiated this, and went to the property owners.
Property owner signed the petition, correct?
Yeah,
No, wait, all of the property owners?
No, the majority of the property owners representing the majority of the value of the property.
Who
in the
did,
annexation.
who signed the petition?
Mr. Jones, Mr. Partridge, and somebody representing a trust.
On some of the other property? Okay, well, that's what I just,
That's
because I
probably-
talked to some of the Partridges, one
Probably
of the
this
sons,
right
and
here.
they didn't seem to know anything about it. And that was what, and again, that was one of the sons, and it was just yesterday. And so I was just curious to see whether that was something that had been initiated by anyone, individual landowner that was requesting that type of a thing. So not so much, but the
city
city.
initiated it and got the signatures.
And then to annex to that portion. Okay. And the reasoning, I guess that would be my next question.
Well, from the city's point of view, is it would tie in with this industrial area right here. All this is light industrial.
Okay. I gotta just figure where that area is over there. Okay.
This white top's
PDM.
PDM here.
PDM, and then moving on down. Okay.
Yeah, that's a old Willis Hill home there.
Is all of this currently considered county then? Or
Has this been annexed in right here? Yes.
that all is over there?
All this is that
Okay, over
city.
there, okay, that's what I was wondering, if that other strip up there
Yeah,
was.
all this is city
Has
right
been
here.
city, okay, okay. I was just wondering if all of that other had been annexed already, so. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Everything's annexed over to the fertilizer.
Oh, yeah, annexed right here to Chet Olson's place right here. Oh, I was hoping you'd get up.
Okay,
Okay.
show me what's annexed there.
Tell
That's
us
what
tell us your name for the record.
Lynn Hales.
Okay.
Okay, is that annexed right in there?
This is all annexed right
Got the
here.
dotted line.
How do you turn this thing on?
There's a little button there. Don't put it in
Have
your
I gotta
mouth.
hold it?
See the dotted line, Lynn?
Okay, so
Comes
that's
down.
annexed, this Jerry Hill deal here?
Yep.
This red line, this dotted red line right here, sorry, look
Okay, so that's the only thing that's there as far as the city's concerned is a sewer line, right? In other words, this part right here is the sewer line.
What, is that where the sewer line is, Dave?
Yeah, it goes right up here to, I don't think it goes up that far. Does Chet have sewer? Anybody know?
It's not far from his property, but he doesn't have,
But I thought, hey, I thought they got the sewer somewhere in there. Is what,
that's my understanding.
now hold it. It's over here. Yeah. Jerry Hill lives right there, right?
Right.
Okay. So the sewer line goes down Third West right here. Is that, am I in the right place? Yeah, that's PDM. So it goes there and up over and into here to the sewer plant up in here, right? Okay, I live right in here. And right up there on 4,000 South, I've got a farm. Okay. In between there, you got roughly 3 miles, Brother Anderson. Or Mr. Anderson. Okay. There's just a whole lot of property in there. Back here about 20-something years ago, I used to farm this right here. And Jim Rigtrip came to me and he says, hey, you better put grain in there this year, because if the city will let me, I'll put homes in there. Okay. And so that didn't happen. And it's, you know, they've since sold that, and somebody else tried to put it into some kind of an industrial deal. And they're the ones that I think stood the cost of all of this
Utility and
sewer
line.
situation. Okay, I've got no objection, really, to this town being the home of pride and progress. I mean, I think they've done a great job here for the most part. But I do not want to wake up someday, particularly, living right, I don't even know where I live.
You're down.
Now where I'm, no, I'm living,
Did you drop breadcrumbs on the way here?
did I what?
Drop breadcrumbs on the way here?
I don't know what I'd do.
Can you go down, Seth?
Scroll it down a little bit.
Scroll down.
Right there, where you live.
No, that's not him. He's,
Heck, I can't.
Oh, yeah.
Where's the annexation? I live right, the annex,
No,
you're further south. Here's
Got me all-
Brockbank right here in the,
where's Brockbank?
right here at the very bottom. Yep. This is Brockbank. And your house is gonna be right here on,
My house isn't west, is south of Brockbank. My house is somewhere right there.
that's right.
Yep. Fourth north.
Okay, but isn't all this property here, for instance, you say Trax is coming into there. Is that right, brother, Mr. Anderson?
It'd be heavy commuter rail, not tracks.
So they're gonna be able to, PDM and the boys are still gonna be able to have their spurs, the old, sugar factory's still gonna be able to do that.
That's my understanding.
UTA owns the rail.
Today.
UTA owns, and they're letting them use it, or? Okay, but I don't see the big hurry to put anything in here as much until we develop some of this out here.
Well, the thing of it is, we've got most of the utilities are already there, which they're not out there.
Well, I know I've got a big power line in my backyard that I didn't want.
Just tap onto it.
Anyway, what I'd really like to say here, as much as anything, is when are we ever gonna put homes on the west side of town?
Well, if you go back to that general plan map.
Okay,
Yeah,
for instance, most of my property there, what's this purple?
That's mixed use. And this is low-density housing?
Medium residence.
Medium. And this is,
Low density.
this is residential here. This is residential here.
So what's this little,
That's, well, you look right there, medium-density residential.
so what does mixed use mean?
Mixed use is homes as well as commercial. You look at things like the,
What's wrong with putting this into mixed use till we either have somebody that wants it or doesn't want it? You got a big objection to that, Dave?
One of the reasons is maybe the property owners wanted industrial that signed the petition.
That is, which party did you talk to, Frank?
John?
You talked to John?
Who signed the petition?
It was Jalen.
Jay Lynn's,
Yeah.
John's not a small owner, I guess. Isn't he on Ernie's house about yet? But, I have not a big deal. I don't think I need to be worrying about a big house. I mean, not a big house, a big box plant there. That's not really my problem. My problem is that sometime we ought to jump this freeway here and do some kind of housing as well as whatever.
right.
Well,
That's
I'm not saying
like-
it needs to happen today or tomorrow.
That's like every time somebody says, "Hey, Brandon, how come you haven't got a Chili's or an Outback Steakhouse? Because I like a steak." And it's like, well,
Well,
when they're ready to build,
someone told me
Then-
the other day it's because we can't get a liquor license.
oh,
No,
it's not
I
that.
don't like
That's not true.
I don't know.
You wouldn't know anything about that, Brother Hells.
What would you like yours to be mixed use, or what's your feeling here?
I talked to Dave today. Do I have to come up?
sure, we want you on
Yeah, come on
camera.
up here. Did you talk to Jay Lynn? I didn't know Jay,
No, I didn't talk to Jay Land.
you know,
That's not my business, his property.
I know, I agree,
All
and I'm,
right. Okay, I spoke with Dave today, and we had talked about annexing this property out here, which I concurred with. I said, if that's what will happen, I'll go along with it. But for as Mr. Swenson, Garth, and myself, we want to stay where we can build a home, because I don't want to handicap my kids because of industry and stuff like this. I explained that to Dave. And I said, if my children, where's my marker?
right here.
How long you had it?
You're in half and half here. You're in one thing there, and you own this right here.
Right, and what I
Okay.
told Dave, and I'll tell anybody here, that this property here, I said, I'd like to see the day come when we can build a home in there. For an example, if my grandson, right at the present time, is living in this home right here, mine, I told him, I said, now, if that went straight industry, he couldn't even add on to that house. He's done. The only way he could do it would tear it completely down and start over with a new home. And that's redundant as far as I'm concerned. So what I'm saying is that if he decides he wants to build here and let one of his kids, we have a lease on life, that he could do that. He could build a home here, and my other daughter owns property right here that'll be leased to her. Now, my son has got all this up here. I know he's not going to farm, and I told Dave today, if we want to go industry with the rest of this, fine. If you've contacted everybody, I'll go along with it. Hanson, as far as I know, have done this. She was a Markham, but she's married to a Hanson, and they've gone that, and I said, I'll do the same here. I haven't talked to Jay Lynn. I felt like that's his prerogative. What he does is his business, not mine. So that's where I stand, and I explained this to Garth today, and he and I have talked about it several times. And he concurs, because there's a day coming that maybe he'll want to build right here, one of his boys.
Okay, what do we get? We got a ditch there as the dividing line.
That the ditch right here stays right on the property line and does not
Okay.
vary across the
What do we
ditch.
have in mind for farther west there, Dave? You got another 100 acres in there before the next road there on,
Well-
in what the west it is, what, down on Richards
Oh,
Road.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
So again, I think this vision, we should call it that, provides some latitude. There's been some concern expressed about further industrial zoning. That could happen. Likewise, I think just as easily with us talking about having some of the properties in this annexation potentially being zoned for residential uses. You know, you could see that area, I think, very logically and consistently with the general plan, designated with some kind of residential zoning. I think you have, again, that kind of discretion to decide. So it could be one of a few different things.
The property owners really have the.
Well, I understand what you're saying, other than, okay, I know what you're saying.
You do?
Well, would you rather be mixed use though, Lynn?
The thing
Would you
I-
rather,
Well, the
what's
problem-
rural
no.
development now?
But I can't see the city
Well,
coming
what's-
along and saying, we're gonna take your ground, we're gonna do this, because the city doesn't operate that way.
Okay, that RR zoning, how's that? Is that go to the county, and if you got 5.25 acres, you can throw a house up?
It's probably the zoning district that we have in the city that is most consistent with how the property is zoned today in the county, which I think is RA5. The difference is in the county, you have to have 5 acres to build a house. In the city, you'd be able to build on 1. Now, typically, people keep 5 acres, 5.25, because they want to stay in green belt, whether it's in the city or the county.
Okay.
But it'd be very similar to how the properties are zoned today in the county, at least as I understand it.
Okay, you saw Lynn point out a couple places that kids might want to build a home. Okay, there's not frontage for the county zoning,
No, because it's annexed in the city.
but
That's how it helps.
could Jennifer build a house there without problems? She
doesn't
wouldn't have the frontage, Lynn.
Well, because she doesn't have the property either. Because of the way the property's designed and dealt with by myself, she has other property.
I thought who was you
No,
saying was gonna build?
Jolynn.
Jolynn, okay,
Right.
could Jolynn build there?
She could if she wanted to.
But she's not got the frontage. Unless you
She
get
will
different
have the
zoning.
frontage. What
You'd
about-
have the
she
same
has the
challenges
frontage.
that way.
Huh?
If the concerns, whether somebody has frontage or not, to be able to build a house,
Not in the city, it's not a problem.
it'd be the same
If
in the
he's got the same
county
zoning.
or the city. The issues
Yeah,
would be the
the
same to
issues
deal
would be the
with.
same.
No, but the problem is,
Jolynn would have to build a road to get her frontage along the Big Sac, or somewhere.
no matter where you build, you're gonna have to put a road,
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
no
Well,
matter where you're at. You need me for anything else, John?
Thank you.
No, you did really well. Okay.
Thanks, Lynn.
All right. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Seeing none, I would,
Move we
Take-
go out of public hearing.
Second.
okay, motion to go out of public hearing by Councilman Gordon, second by Councilman Scopes. Okay, any discussion?
All in favor? Do we have to go out of?
Oh, all in favor, yeah, yes. All in favor? Aye. Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I see that, again, we're talking about an area that is and as I looked at this ordinance, I started looking at different maps and different zoning maps of different cities too, that are in areas that we touch, and very similar ways when you talk about I-15, as I see it, when you talk about I-15 and a railroad that go pretty congruent together all the way throughout the valley. These cities, every city that's had this happen, have these growing pains where they decide to annex and zone and different things. But it is pretty typical between the freeway and the railroad is a zoning like this, a light industrial zone. And it's for a lot of different reasons, but I think west of I-15 and Spanish Fork's always been one, at least the developers I've talked to and worked with over the last decade or so have always talked about that area over in west of the freeway, just the challenges that come with the water table of being able to build residential homes there, being able to make it be feasible for the landowner and for them to do it. That's not to say what happens in the future, out west of that is something we could predict very highly right now. You can see we don't have a general plan for that because it's not annexed. But this piece, the way it sits, makes some common sense to me that way of what zoning it would be, both at the request of the city, the initiation of the city, and then the request of the majority of the landowners wanting it to be that way. You certainly wouldn't want to zone it, stayed in an agricultural area there, and the utilities are out to it, and then you have, there's not going to be, when that industrial park above it does come in, which has been put off, but one day will be there, is not a lot of residential homes maybe wanting to be built right across the street from it either. And those landowners, if that's what they're desiring, should have an option to be in an industrial zone. That's the way I feel.
For me, some of the discussion points I have, I appreciate the comments that have been made. I think to start would be to look at, we hear industrial, whether it's light industrial, heavy industrial, but we hear industrial and we think dust and cement and trucks and things like that. And there certainly are some permitted uses in a light industrial area, indoor manufacturing and assembly and storage of finished products. That could be similar to the cabinetry shop that we see right off of I-15, just to the north of town. You're going to have things as trucking and warehousing, research, development, and testing services, automotive service. But we also have things like office supply, copying, printing businesses, things like J-Mart that we have here in town and others. Offices, restaurants is a permitted use inside the light industrial zone. Financial institutions, being banks and credit unions, things. Retail businesses, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they would be big box, but any retail business. Agriculture, including the production of food and fiber crops, tree farms, grazing, and animal husbandry of livestock is also allowed in light industrial areas. Instructional studios, veterinary offices, car wash, automotive repair, tire car centers, municipal facilities required for local service. If this area develops, boy, you can't see purple worth anything. And we've pointed at that thing with lasers enough. If that area develops with the housing and the mass housing that's been discussed, allowing developers to put houses and homes and hundreds and 200 houses out there, there would be a need for a light industrial zone to allow a municipal facility required for local service, a fire station to be able to be built, to be able to take care of all the homes that there's concern as to whether there's homes or industrial. And so without some of that light industrial zoning, it would be very difficult to put a fire station out there to be able to take care of people and the needs and the challenges that they would have as that grows. The general plan is just that, a plan. It's not set in stone, and that's been talked about. But it does allow the flexibility, as we see there are no black lines that outline any of the colors. Those aren't borders. It's not a sharp delineated area, but rather mixed use kind of blends into a lighter use and then moderate use of residential. If we look at just the way that our town has grown, along Main Street. The shop owners lived above the stores on Main Street. That was how they built their stores, and they lived right up above. The mixed use allows for that. It's called infill overlay is the new term for it, but it allows for housing above retail space. And so it's kind of going back to our roots as small towns and communities where the blacksmith lived right above his blacksmith shop and other things like that. And so there's already in the general plan housing and residential housing that's allotted inside the mixed-use area. Now, it would be, generally speaking, because it's close to a traffic corridor of I-15, it would be housing more geared towards perhaps, younger couples that want to be able to get to the freeway and travel here, there, and everywhere. Or, other couples that either don't have kids or don't want yards or work up in Salt Lake, but love living down in this end of the valley. So you have that housing, townhouses and things allowed in an infill overlay area in that mixed use. And then as we look as it goes out, you have a little more dense, the housing gets a little more sparse, where you start having not quite condos, but townhouses with maybe a little bit of yard in the yellowish area, and then into the brown, and as it goes further out, the houses and the rural residential as has been discussed with development. One of the concerns has been that, that those that live out, Lakeshore and out that direction, that they'd have this whole industrial area to come through before they get to town. And a question I ask myself as I look at it is, if they're living out there, and I have friends that I've gone out and it takes a good 25 minutes easily to get out to their house in Lakeshore. And when they come to town for the restaurants, automotive repair, businesses, instructional studios, which are, a dance studio could be something like that, retail businesses, office supply, trade or business schools. So they come to town for the things that they would be passing through to get to. And so really I see it as Spanish Fork being much more inclusive of our neighbors, rather than being a buffer, but actually being able to offer the opportunity for those services to be built out closer to our neighbors in Lakeshore and Leland and Benjamin. Being able to have a center, and we look historically through Utah, there's a traffic and an industrial corridor that runs along I-15, and we see that with the railroad, and we see not just our community, but other communities where the gray and the light industrial runs straight up through, that kind of anchors town, and that's really where the towns were. It was discussed that our city's lopsided, well, mostly because growth has kind of come out this direction. It's been expressed the concern that maybe we ought not zone it light industrial, or at least the current annexation has that mix to allow for the residential as well as the industrial, and just leave it all residential, or at least allow for that. One of the challenges in the city, and my time on the council, as I've heard, developers have come in, there aren't at this current time developers that are coming down looking at the west side of the freeway for housing developments. They're not looking for land to put houses. They're looking for land to carry that industrial down. And the general plan kind of puts a limit on that as far as the city leaders before us, as far as saying this is kind of, will allow some industrial growth, but only to a certain extent and only so far down. But what has come before the city are developers that are looking for that industrial. And so one of the challenges for a business is they come knowing that if they have a particular timetable to build something, and they have the monies and they have the land that they're looking at, is the zoning. Because they would have, if it were rural residential rather than light industrial, that business knows that it would be a 3 to 6 to 8 month process to go through what we're going through and have gone through with these proceedings, in getting out the notices for the public hearing, getting out the fact that they want to have a zone change. And then with the money and time they've invested in it, maybe passing on land that was a good second or third option, they find that the zoning doesn't pass. And so now they have to go to their third or fourth option to go put their business or their industry because they missed the opportunity. And so it's not that industrial and heavy business is what we necessarily want to see, as evidenced by the fact that we have the two separate zones in the annexation. But I think it sets up an opportunity for what has been asked for from different businesses to come into the area with land that is already zoned. Now, as Councilman Dart said, the cards are still in the landowner's hands. You own the land, they own the land. And if they don't want to sell to that big box because they're afraid that it will be a separation between who lives out there and who lives in here, then they simply won't sell to that big box business. That's one of the nice things about our country is the landowners have the power, and those that own that land still have the right to be able to accept the sales offer or deny it. But the annexation as it stands allows for the flexibility for family members to still be able to build on residential land, but yet with industrial that anchors or continues with the anchor that the city started years ago, but then allows for those amenities to go out to our neighbors that are easy access to those that live downtown that could go out to the west and decide to build a home because they like shopping out there. But it also affords those from those that live out of town and makes it a much greater community as a whole. Because, yeah, they're coming through it to come to town, but they're coming to the stores that they would be coming in town anyway, are my thoughts.
Would you repeat that?
Sorry, I was a school teacher. I used to talking a lot.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kier.
And I think I just echo what Rod says, the land is still yours. It would just be a different, in a city instead of a county.
And I think the city has done a good job of listening to you, what you want. We got a rural residential and we've got a light industrial, and we were willing to cooperate with the landowners, what they wanted. Even though it's, the general plan says light industrial, that does not necessarily mean what it will be. It's only if the landowners sign for it, for an annexation, for it to be that. Like I said before, landowners really hold the cards. So, yeah.
Clarify one item, Garth. Do you own west of that ditch there?
Yeah.
You own a little piece out into here?
Well, I think that corner was, years ago, it was part of our.
Part of yours?
And evidently I'm still paying taxes on it.
I didn't know whether you owned part of this building.
I just go over to the ditch now.
Just to the ditch?
Well, that's what I formed. Like I say, I'm paying taxes on property there and in
So
the
there's an
middle,
overlap, and
everywhere else.
this is where the city limits goes here.
Okay.
So I assume, when they did it, they assumed that this piece here was under one ownership.
Okay, we ready to make a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance number A01-15, an ordinance annexing property known as the Devaney annexation. Do I have to specify the, as constituted with the two different zones?
Yeah, because the ordinance that was presented to you, I believe.
Was
has
different.
The old language.
Right,
As the urban village.
Yeah,
right,
or solid industrial, so.
right, so I need to
State
specify
change.
Which we've referred to as Exhibit A, so the zoning as defined,
in Exhibit A. Okay.
Exhibit A, yeah.
Yes, as defined in Exhibit A.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for ordinance number A01-15, an ordinance annexing property known as the Devaney annexation. Well, that includes Exhibit A. Roll call vote. Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scopes.
Aye.
Councilman Dart. Aye. Motion passes. Ordinance number A01-15 passes. Okay. Thank you for coming. If you want to leave, you can, I guess. But you might want to stick around for Kent's presentation. Okay, we are now discussing ordinance number 08-15, impact fee enactment. Kent.
I think Ken's reputation precedes it.
There's out the scouts.
5 slides then, Ken, 5?
I didn't get any slides in today. But I still get half the gate receipts, right?
Yeah, you know what half of nothing is, don't you?
Yeah, I'll just double that. Okay. Tonight, there's going to be a public hearing on impact fees to adopt an ordinance, which has been advertised and given notice. And tonight, I'm going to give a brief explanation about impact fees, about what went into get to where we're at today for those at home, and then turn the time back to the public if there's any input from that, and then we'll adopt this impact fee study stuff. Okay, by definition, an impact fee it's a fee that is imposed by local government within the United States on a new or proposed development project to pay for all or a portion of the costs of providing public services to the new development. So, and that's by definition, so it's not something just Spanish Fork's thought up. This is a national type process. The City Council and the staff have tried to be accurate, transparent, fair, and responsible in when we're trying to calculate and to come up with the impact fee. And it's been almost 2 to 3 years we've been through this process, and this is culminating to this tonight. We're finally to our end after 2 or 3 years worth of study and presentations trying to come up with this. So the way I put my definition of impact fee is having the developer pay their share of the impact of their development on our system. So if you look at each of the systems that the city has, they have water, sewer, electric, all those different utility systems and services. And each time a new development comes into town, it puts they use our system. So the developer might put water lines in their subdivision, but guess what? Those water lines have to come from somewhere. Or the sewer line through their subdivision or to their house, but guess what? That sewer has to go someplace. And so there are systems inside our city that we need to maintain and to allow continued service to our existing customers and also to these new people that move into the community. So having the new growth or the new people that are moving in, a new development, pay for their impact on the different systems of the city. And that's where we're going tonight, is what is that cost and how do we come up with that? And it's a pretty complicated process. But you know, there are people moving into Spanish Fork. People want to move into Spanish Fork. Took this picture just north of town. They're trying to get into town because it's a great place to live. It's not right near Walmart. Okay, three good questions we're going to answer tonight. What is the impact of the development on the city's systems and other utility services? How much are the impact fees? And who is going to pay for those impact fees? Okay, so every time a new subdivision, they start seeing dirt moving, how much is it, that impact of that system on that development on our system? So let's answer the first one. How do we calculate impact fees? It's pretty complicated. When is it that our system needs to be expanded? Say up on the east side of town, we have an 8-inch or a 6-inch water line. You can keep adding subdivisions, but at some point, that 6-inch water line isn't going to do it. Or a sewer line, it's just not going to do it. Or when does that water tank at the mouth of the canyon have its capacity full? And so it's not just that next one house. As you gradually get 100 houses in, then it's an impact on it. What does it cost to expand our system, and how many will that expansion serve, and who builds that expansion? Okay, so each one of our services need to be analyzed. Each one of these, we have utility services of water, PI, electric, sewer, storm drainage, parks and recreation, our public safety, transportation, and water rights. Those are some of the systems that we're proposing that we feel that development should pay their fair share to buy into the assets and the systems that are already here. we hired professional firms to give us an independent assessment. As we went into it and says, well, okay, let's calculate what that improvement's going to cost, and what is the improvements that we need to do. Say they develop in this area, what is it we need? If they're going to develop in this area, what do we need? In each one of those, water, electric, sewer, each one of those areas, what do we need? So we hired had some modeling systems done and master plan studies done from independent people that know our system, analyze it. They can see what the water pressure is on this side of town. If you keep building out, is there going to be enough water pressure for your PI, for your water, for your sprinkler to turn on? So what this modeling and master plan studies did, over the last 2 years, we've done all of our studies. What do we have right now? What's in the roads? What's in the streets? What's in the power lines? What's in the substations? What's at the sewer plant? What's in the water tanks? All of those areas, what do we now have, and when does it need to be adjusted? Then we developed capital facilities plans for each one of those. Water had theirs, sewer had theirs, electric, parks, all of them had their own capital facilities plan. What that does, it tells us, well, what do we need? As our city grows and our infrastructure gets old, we need to replace that. As we add new subdivisions, we need to add to our system. And so our capital facilities plan is for a citywide, what assets do we need to build? And to build up, to keep our systems going, maintaining the old and building new, and handling the new growth. From that capital facilities plan, then we refined that populace of all those projects down to what projects are for just because of new growth. Because impact fees can only be collected and projects for those projects that are tied to new growth. Question?
Is there a time limit on how long the money can be retained?
It is. It's 6 years. You have to spend it. You can collect it for 6 years and then spend it in 6 years. Okay? So as those projects then are listed throughout these studies and these capital facilities plans, we take the impact fee facilities plans. So for each one of these, water, sewer, electric, we find out which are just impact fee projects. As we need to upsize a sewer line, if we need to upsize water lines, or amperage of an electrical line, or a substation, those are listed in the impact facilities plans for each one of those areas. And then after we identify what those impact fee capital projects are, then we can go through our fee analysis and say, okay, these are the projects that are tied to that. This is how much they cost. Now let's get that cost back to when do we collect it, and by a building permit, on plat, or whatever we're going to collect that on. So those are some main 4 things that we're going to talk about today. And so I'm going to give you a little flow chart and show you how we walk through it. So we have the modeling master plans that were done. And so you can think of each one of these, say this is water. So water's going to go through this, and then a different one is going to go through for electric. We're going to go through the same thing. So what do we have now in our system? The next, we're going to, from that, all those studies that says what do we have in the streets, we're going to say, okay, what projects do we need to build for our city? That's the replacement, repairs, plus anything new that are all inside that. Then a subsection of that list is going to be the impact fee projects that we can pull out. Okay, these are just the impact fee ones that are related in that list. We take those impact fee things and we come over and we make an impact facilities plan. So those are all of them. This one down here is just refined down to the impact fee ones for impact fee facility plan. Those are only the impact fee ones. And then from that, then we can do this impact fee analysis that you have to hire or do. We hired an outside consultant to do this, to do the majority of each one of these steps. And then from that, we figure out what's the allowable fee that we can charge just on those projects. And from that, we get the fee. And then we also decide when we collect that fee, because some are collected at the plat level and some are collected at the building permit level. Okay? So there's the flow that we go through for each one of these. And so that's why it's taken quite a while. We started with the impact fee analysis, and we had ideas of each of these other boxes and plans, but as we got into it, we decided we better back up and go clear back to the modeling and go walk through each step of each one of our systems to make sure we did it right, because we wanted to be transparent, we wanted to be fair, we didn't want to overcharge the homeowners that are building, but we didn't want to undercharge the residents that help build the system we have today. It's our responsibility to them to say, you know, you have the new people pay their fair share. And so that's the route that this study has gone. So how much are impact fees? This is what's in the proposals. Oh, I was going to show. Let me back up. If you look at these documents, I have them right here, and they're available at the library and also in my office and probably online. So we have, here's a 100-page document, which is the purple one down here on the bottom, which is the facilities plan. And there are other documents up here. I just don't have the master modeling plan, capital facilities plan. But here's a 100-page document that lists all the facilities for impact fees in the 100-page one. Then we get over here to the analysis one, and we have about a 50 or 60-page document that walks through the calculations, what projects those are. I'm not going to go through every project that's in there. That would take way too long. But just to know that these documents do exist, that it's formal documents that can be looked and reviewed to by the public. Okay, so here's what our current fees are. As you can see, we have, in the categories that the impact fees that would be listed, we have water, PI, electric, sewer, storm drain, parks and rec, and we have two new ones that didn't exist before on our current fees. There's public safety, transportation, and then we singled out water rights. Water rights were collected at different rates for different types of water, whether it's, I guess, a culinary water source or an individual or a PI water source. But the proposed fees, you can see that some go up, some go down. Overall, because the way we're treating water rights went down, storm drainage went down, but some of the others went up. So we have a net about $1,000 down. Storm drainage is a little bit harder to look at on this because there's 3 different areas that we used to propose on storm drainage. Now we're proposing one city-wide one. And so when you think of what was charged before, that one depended upon which part of town it was in. In the future, it will not depend which part of town you are. That's the charge for wherever you build in town. The 2 new ones down here for public safety, the city fronted the capacity for public safety into the future, and so new people, as they move in, they're buying into that capacity, and some of these other categories that are there. These fees are just those for a single family residential unit. There's also fees, I'll show you a couple of slides about, there's a non-residential fee, which is commercial, and a calculation for it. And there's also multifamily. If there's a duplex, 4-plex, 8-plex, or whatever those are calculated a little bit differently also. But these numbers are tied to a single family residential unit. Here's a summary of what impact fees have been collected in the past. This is as of last year's fiscal year of last June. You can see some of our categories that we had. You can see there's no storm drain, or there's no public safety or transportation, because we're just proposing those new. Here's the existing rates that we charged in each one of these areas. So here's, you see the storm drainage that varied between the different areas of town. This is the balance that we have at the end of last year. You can see some of those are negative. The pink mean that they're negative. And those are impact fee projects that the city has fronted, meaning the city needs to be repaid those expenses as we collect impact fees. Water rights has a balance in it. Recreation has a balance in it as of the last July. It's mostly being spent this year. And the storm drainage, between the 3 of them, there was a net positive balance in that. You can see it along this line here about how much we collect each year in those areas. And so you can see that about $150,000 in water, sewer, it all depends on what that rate is, and most of those are collected on the building permit. So times the number of building permits and by that rate, and that gives you an idea of how much that is. Okay, the next question. What can impact fees be spent on? we look back to these documents right here, and only those that fall within the impact fee capital facilities plan that flow into this analysis, that is the only projects that money can be spent on. So the city can't collect water impact fees and go repair old water lines with it. They can't buy chlorine to put in their operations or their O&M with impact fee. It can only be used for capital projects, and those capital projects that are listed within this impact fee facility plan. Okay? Who's going to pay the impact fees? Of course, ultimately it is the homeowner, but there are different time lengths or timetables when that time points when they are going to have to pay it. For storm drain and PI water rights, they're due prior to the recording of the final plat. So that's before any lots are actually sold. But all the other ones are going to be due when the building permit is pulled or obtained. Of course, this slide show where's the buck stop? On most developers, the buck stops at the property when the homeowner buys the property, that they usually pass those costs on that are paid at the plat level into the cost of the lot. I'm pretty sure. So here's a picture I showed you once before of this wonderful subdivision. Dave Anderson likes this subdivision. Where is he? I think you can do model our airplane takeoffs on a couple of these driveways. They get pretty creative.
They left so much open space.
It definitely has open space and no trees, no anything, but lots of driveways.
Place for a ball field.
But as development happens, we try to control where that is, and also we have impact fees to help us pay for the infrastructure as we move forward to provide infrastructure and resources for these subdivisions that they impact us. So once again, this is the impact fees as you adopt these fees tonight, or this impact fee study and the ordinance, you will be able to, we'll process forward to have these be the new impact fees. And reminding you, it is creating 2 new impact fees as far as public safety and transportation. Okay, there's also, I told you about the non-residential, which is commercial and multifamily. These impact fee documents are in my office and at the library and on the city's website. And after tonight, if you adopt these, then they become effective 90 days after the adoption, which puts it around June 5th. So those new rates and fees won't be effective until after June 15th or on June 15th. Okay, a couple important points that Junior wanted me to make sure I mentioned in this is Spanish Fork's impact fees are based on our own needs and expenses. They are not set based on what our neighboring cities charge. So it isn't like, well, let's see what Payson's charging for their impact fees, where you want to be just under them or like them or whatever. Impact fees aren't like that. They're independent of each city doing their own analysis of what their needs are. So Spanish Fork has their own systems and need to expand our own systems. And I use this topography and resources matter. So our city's set up differently than our neighboring city. Where are our water? Where is our electric? Where is our sewer plant? The gravity flows. And so you have to do lift stations as you get to a certain point. So topography matters on how it impacts our impact fees. So if you look at a city's impact fee, wow, they're really high or they're really low. Well, it depends on what the impact is to get the infrastructure in for their systems. If it's another water tank, clear up the canyon, or if they already have enough water tanks, and how fast they grow. Other cities have their own needs and their own expenses. So I'm going to give you briefly look at some of the how our expenses, our impact fees, compared to other cities, but it's not in an effort to say, look at us, we're lower, we're looking at our neighbors or anything like that, but just to give you an idea of where those are at. I want to point out a couple things. So if you look in the top in red, it says water. So everything on this slide has to do with water. And so that's what's going to change as we go through this. You'll see that it has a residential across the top, it has multifamily, and then the bottom section, a couple of rows, there's about the commercial of what a commercial person would have to pay to build a new store, a new building in our town. Okay, so that's water. Here's sewer. Here's Parks and Rec. Now, there's something interesting on Parks and Rec. You can see down on commercial, we don't charge impact fee on Parks and Rec because we don't think that they require their workers at the store to participate in Parks and Rec. So it's just the residential areas that pay the recreation. So there's not a Parks and Rec fee on commercial building permits. So there's stormwater, which is changing a little bit, dramatically going down. Here's a new one, public safety. You can see that public safety is being charged in Lehigh, Payson, not in Provo, but Springville. So it's not something new. This is new for us, we're adding, but it's not new in other cities. Here's transportation, again, a new one for us. It's being charged in those other three, this time not in Payson, but they are in Provo. Here's PI. Electric, and kind of a grand total. So in total, ours are kind of going down. It's kind of a different number. That's 13. It just depends on which storm drain you use and what water rights you use in that comparison. But this is kind of gives you a good idea of the average of where most of those are. So our impact fees in a total for a developer are going down about $1,000. Some are going up, some are going down, but the net is about $1,000 less. And that is the final impact.
Okay.
But it's not the final time we're going to be doing the impact fee analysis or anything. So each year, we're going to have to go through that cycle, whether we update our models or our facility plan. We'll be reviewing those, and we have the software that we can change those things and pump out whatever that's at the end, the fee at the end. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Thanks, Kent.
This is a public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
So
Motion to go into public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Mendenhall, second by Councilman Gordon, go in public hearing. Clark, would you like to get up and say anything?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye. See- Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Councilman Gordon, second by Councilman Scobb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any discussion? I would like to say I'm happy to see one for public safety and transportation.
Yeah.
That we haven't had before.
Agreed.
And I'm happy to say that we are in the ballpark compared with the other cities. Just saying.
And is that a yearly thing of you reviewing that and spitting out those numbers? Is that law now? Is that state law that has to be done, or why would we do that?
Not state law, but good wisdom.
Just good wisdom. Yeah.
To make sure we're fair and accurate and transparent, that we're not charging too much or too little. So we'll be reviewing those plans, but just like the budget, things change. All of a sudden, a developer comes in and says, I want to build over here. Oh, well, we've been anticipating that for 10 years. Okay, so we'll have to rethink what is our needs over in this other area as that happens, as it impacts us.
Were developers involved in this study at all?
They were given an opportunity to review it. Our consultant has had plenty of contact with those. I'm not sure that they were at the desk looking at the numbers, but they had opportunity to review the stuff as we did it. So.
It's the result that they're not here tonight yelling at us for something is a pretty good indication.
I think it's a good indication that we've done our homework and did our best case of doing the prudent thing the wisest thing we could do to come up with the best, fairest impact fees.
Well, I would make a motion that we approve ordinance number 0815, the impact fee.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Mendenhall to adopt ordinance number 0815. An ordinance impact fee enactment. Okay, we'll do, since this is an ordinance, by roll call vote. Councilman Gordon,
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall,
Aye.
Councilman Scobes,
Aye.
and I vote aye also. Okay, ordinance passes. All right. Another ordinance, 09-15, making vehicles with expired registrations of more than 3 months a nuisance. Who's going to speak to that? Jason?
Yes, I will. State law does require that all vehicles that you want to drive or use be registered in the state. Boats, cars, RVs, four-wheelers, ATVs, all that kind of stuff is required to be registered. That being said, we have several properties within the city that the people have let the cars just sit there. And it's causing the neighboring properties to lose their value. And so we're trying to clean that up a little bit. And the way to do that is to take the ordinance and basically add to the nuisance ordinance that if you have more than 2 cars that aren't registered or expired registration more than 3 months, then it's considered a nuisance. And the only way around that is to have those cars in a building, garage, or other shed or something that you can place those in. Otherwise, they can be cited, or they would be cited. Now, an easy way to get those in compliance would be simply to go get them registered, and then they're complied with, and that would solve the nuisance issue. Any questions?
Four-wheelers and things like that which aren't garaged and
No, four-wheelers are not on here.
Okay.
It's just simply vehicles, which would be cars, trucks, SUVs, those kind of things.
so
Boats and then trailers.
boats and trailers.
Yeah, no, not necessarily four-wheelers, ATVs, that kind of stuff.
Maybe the side-by-sides that are street legal.
Possibly, if
You're not going to
if
be
you have too many of
letting
them
those.
sitting on your property.
Right, right.
Motorcycles would also fall into that,
It could.
or into the vehicles part.
Motorcycles are you put them away fairly easy,
Yeah, they're not too hard to hide
so.
in a.
Solution is somebody fixing a car, restoring a car or something, and if they had 2 or more on their property, you'd put it in a garage and fix
Yeah,
it
you
up.
put it in a garage, or if you have enough property, a shed, those kind of things. Salem actually has the same portion to their ordinance. We've come up with, decided that this was something that should be added here, so we looked into it, and that's what we proposed.
It's good.
Okay,
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason. Any discussion?
Make a motion that we approve ordinance number 0915, making vehicles with expired registrations of more than 3 months a nuisance.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, second by Councilman Gordon. I move to approve ordinance number 09-15, an ordinance defining a vehicle with expired registration of more than 3 months a nuisance. Okay, Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
And I vote aye also. Okay, ordinance passes. Okay, committee appointments. To the feasibility study, Citizens Committee, this has to do with the proposed study of the rec center / library. And we've come up with, how many names on this, Seth?
There are 23 on that list.
23 names on this list. I'm going to read these names, and then we have to have council approval.
Yeah, so these are names that the mayor is asking to be appointed, that you give your consent.
Okay.
This is exhaustive, not exhaustive.
This shouldn't be the whole list.
This is a partial list.
Yeah, it's probably 23/30ths of the whole list.
Okay, we're looking for maybe 30 people, and there's 23 on
Sorry,
it.
that doesn't reduce. I had to go.
No, that's, you got a prime number there, and that won't reduce.
You were gonna try and take on the 2 teachers, Seth?
I did not try.
And the banker?
Smart.
But we aren't going to hold
Oh, these are easy. Okay,
Enrique Julio Iglesias de las Montañas Lopez.
okay.
The first one.
Here are the names. Jeff Perry, or Perry, you take your pick. Diana Butler, Brent Hatch, Rebecca Cressman, Kyle Dart, Doug Brown, Randy Chipman, Stacy Beck, Jack Swenson, Lance Wilson, Lorraine Dedrickson, Gary Briggs, Jay Rindisbacher, Robert Parsons, Teresa Facer, Jaylyn Jones, Rocky Giles, Amy Baird, Tarina Anderson, Lynette Olson, Emily Gillingwater, Sadie Condi, Carrie Ney, Matt Barber, and Amy Creer.
I move that we approve the mayor's appointments to the feasibility study group.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Scobes, second by Councilman Mendenhall to approve the list provided by the mayor. All in favor? Aye. Okay, those people pass. Okay, no closed session. I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilman Dart, second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.